If you walked into a shoe repair shop right now, the first thing that would hit you is the smell. Leather and glue and polish, all layered together into something so specific that anyone who ever set foot in one of these places remembers it decades later. That smell used to be part of every downtown, every neighborhood, every small town main street in America. There were 120,000 shoe repair shops in this country during the 1930s. Today, there are fewer than 3,500. 97% of them are gone, and the men who ran them, the cobblers who could take a pair of shoes you were ready to throw away and make them last another 5 years, are disappearing with them. Before we go any further, subscribe and drop a comment saying where you are watching from. You brought your shoes to the cobbler the way you brought your car to the mechanic. It was not a decision you thought about. It was just what you did. The sole wore thin, the heel wore down on one side, the stitching came loose along the welt. You did not throw them away. You walked them down the street to the little shop with the bell above the door and the neon sign in the window that said "Shoe Repair," and you handed them to the man behind the counter. He looked at them the way a doctor looks at an X-ray. He turned them over, ran his thumb along the sole, checked the heel, and told you what needed doing. Then he pulled a stub of chalk from his apron pocket and marked the spots. He wrote you a ticket with a number on it and told you they would be ready on Tuesday. They were never ready on Tuesday, but you came back on Wednesday or Thursday, and there they were, looking like they had 5 more years in them, and most of the time, they did. The shop itself was a place unlike anything else in town. Small, usually no bigger than a living room, every inch of it was filled with something. Shoes lined the shelves along the walls, each pair tagged with a handwritten number. Below them were more shoes in various states of disrepair, stacked on the floor, piled on the workbench, waiting their turn. The workbench ran along the back wall, and it looked like it had not been cleaned since the shop opened. Leather scraps, brass tacks, spools of thread, jars of nails, tins of dye. The tools hung on the wall above it or lay scattered across the surface. A curved knife for trimming soles, a cobbler's hammer with a flat face on one side, an awl for punching holes through leather, and the shoe jacks, those heavy iron forms shaped like feet in different sizes, where the cobbler would mount the shoe and pound the new sole into place. The sound of that hammer hitting leather on iron was as familiar as the bell on the door. It carried out into the street. And underneath it all, that smell. The fresh-cut leather had a clean, almost sweet edge to it. The contact cement was sharp and chemical. The shoe polish was dark and waxy, the kind of smell that settled into your clothes and stayed with you the rest of the day. People who grew up near a shoe repair shop say the same thing. Decades later, if they catch a whiff of leather polish or contact glue in a hardware store, they are standing in that shop again, watching the old man work. The machines were old because they did not need to be new. A Singer stitching machine that might have been 50 or 60 years old, sometimes older, hummed away as the cobbler fed a shoe under the needle. A finisher with spinning wheels and brushes buffed the edges of a fresh sole smooth. A sole press clamped down and bonded rubber to leather under pressure. These machines were built to last generations, and they did. In Portland, Maine, a cobbler named Steve Foss still uses a Singer sewing machine that is over 100 years old. It works as well today as it did the day it was made. At Roy's Shoe Shop in the same state, some of the equipment dates back to when the store opened more than a century ago. The phone number has never changed. Most of the men who ran these shops came from somewhere else. Italian immigrants arriving in the early 1900s with little money and limited English found that shoe repair was a trade you could carry across an ocean. All you needed was a set of tools and the knowledge in your hands. In Glens Falls, New York, a man named Salvatore Pepe came from Italy at the beginning of the 20th century and opened a shop on Elm Street. He had 9 children. When his wife died young, the shop became the family's lifeline. His sons worked alongside him, and Salvatore built a reputation for something most cobblers couldn't do. He made custom shoes for people with one leg shorter than the other or with club feet. He cut patterns from sheets of leather and fitted the pieces together like a puzzle. The sign painter changed his name to Peter because it was easier for customers to remember. Greek immigrants followed a similar path. Many started as shoe shine boys under the padrone system, working stands and parlors until they saved enough to open their own repair shops. In Virginia Beach, a Greek immigrant named Alex Bridolagos opened a shop at Hilltop and never left. For more than 50 years, he worked in the same small storefront with the same brown carpet and the same vintage machines. His daughter Maria and his son Steve grew up in that shop. Steve was so small when he started helping that his father had to put a box behind the cash register so he could reach it. While other kids were at football practice, the Bridolagos children were at work. But Alex never pressured them to follow him into the trade. He always just wanted them to do something that made them happy. Both became dentists. At its peak, his shop was busy enough to keep 2 assistants working alongside his family. Customers came in with everything: men needing new soles for classic dress shoes, women picking up boots tailored to fit their calves. One customer needed zippers installed in a pair of cowboy boots because a disability made them impossible to pull on. Another brought in a $2,000 pair of designer heels that had been chewed by a dog. Alex could fix anything. He was 90 years old and still at the workbench when a reporter came to write about him in 2020. That kind of longevity was not unusual. In Wayland, Michigan, a man named Alan Baugh was still repairing shoes 4 days a week at the age of 93. He had started at 12, pulling heels off shoes in his grandfather's shop, which had opened in 1923. 3 generations of Baughs ran the same store for 100 years. In Portland, Maine, Dan Lentz started as a shoe shine boy in his father's shop and never wanted to do anything else. Now 59, he works alongside his own children, Ryan and Liz, who represent the 3rd generation. Ryan does the stitching and patching. Liz handles the shining and the customers. Despite everything working against them, Roy's shoe shop is busier than it has ever been. Ryan says it is like putting together a puzzle. Every time he picks up a new item, it is something different. A vintage belt that needs extending, a boot that needs patching, a zipper that needs replacing on a bag someone has carried for 20 years and is not willing to give up. The work is slower now because modern materials do not cooperate the way leather used to, but the demand from people who still care about keeping good things alive has not gone away. But those stories are the exceptions. The numbers tell a different story entirely. At the height of the industry in the 1930s, there were 120,000 shoe repair shops in the United States. By 1950, that had dropped to 62,000. By the 1990s, 15,000. By 2000, 7,500. Today, depending on which source you use, somewhere between 3,000 and 3,500 remain. The decline has averaged more than 2% per year for decades and shows no sign of stopping. The market is worth roughly $300 million, which sounds like a lot until you divide it among the shops that are left. Half of all working cobblers are over 50. A quarter are over 75. Almost none are in their 30s or 40s. As Jim McFarland, a 4th-generation cobbler who serves as historian for the Shoe Service Institute of America, puts it, most shoe cobblers don't have an exit plan. They work until their last day. What killed the shoe repair shop was the same force that killed the TV repair shop: The economics reversed. For most of the 20th century, shoes were expensive and built to be repaired. A good pair of leather dress shoes was a serious purchase. You expected them to last for years, and when the sole wore through, you took them to the cobbler and paid $1 or $2 for a half sole and a new set of heels. The shoe came back looking close to new. You might re-sole the same pair 3 or 4 times before the upper finally gave out. The math made sense. Repair cost a fraction of replacement. Then manufacturing moved overseas. Assembly became automated. Synthetic materials replaced leather. And the price of a new pair of shoes dropped to a level where repair stopped making economic sense. A pair of shoes that cost $15 at a discount store is not worth a $40 re-sole. You throw them away and buy another pair. Americans now discard more than 300 million pairs of shoes every year. 95% of them end up in landfills, where the synthetic materials can take anywhere from 30 years to 1,000 years to break down. But cost alone didn't do it. The sneaker changed everything. Athletic shoes became the default footwear for most Americans, and sneakers are not designed to be repaired. They are glued, not stitched. The soles are molded foam, not leather. When they wear out, they are finished. You cannot re-sole a pair of running shoes. The entire construction assumes disposal, and the culture followed the product. Casual dress codes spread from Silicon Valley through the rest of the economy. Fewer leather shoes on fewer feet meant fewer customers walking through the cobbler's door. COVID accelerated what was already a slow collapse. When offices closed and people stopped commuting, they stopped wearing dress shoes entirely. The cobblers who depended on downtown business traffic lost their customer base overnight. McFarland says the lockdowns devastated the business. Many shops that had survived decades of slow decline could not survive the sudden disappearance of foot traffic. In Lowell, Massachusetts, a cobbler named Tom DeMay bought a shop that traced its history back to 1916. The original shoe shine stand had an Italian marble base and a spittoon. 2 seats, no waiting. Babe Ruth had his shoes shined on it in 1918 while visiting Lowell. Dumay's brother had partnered to buy the shop in the late 70s. Tom joined him in 1983, starting out shining shoes, and learned the repair trade from what he called the best cobbler in the city. He remembered when a cobbler could earn $60,000 to $100,000 a year doing this work. That was in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and some of the 90s. Now, he said, a regular work week has sometimes yielded as little as $200. He opens at 10 instead of 8 because nobody came in before noon anyway, and he was wasting money on heat and lights. The shoes people bring in today are made with materials his equipment was never designed for. Plastics, synthetics, composites that take more time and produce worse results than leather ever did. He keeps the doors open. He enjoys the work. He can still make something last. There's a woman who used to buy inexpensive shoes at budget stores until a friend introduced her to a nicer brand. The shoes cost more, but she discovered she could have them resold at the cobbler, not once, but several times. In the long run, they were cheaper than the disposable pairs she'd been buying for years, and she got to keep the shoes she loved. That's the math that used to make sense for everyone. It was how an entire generation thought about the things they owned. You bought quality, you maintained it, you repaired it. And when the cobbler handed your shoes back, they weren't just fixed, they were proof that careful people could make good things last. What disappeared along with the shoe repair shop was not just a service. It was a way of thinking about objects that an entire generation carried with them from childhood. There were kids who went months with holes in their shoes, covered with pieces of cardboard from cereal boxes because new shoes were not in the budget. When you finally got to the cobbler, it was an event. Half soles and new heels could make a worn pair feel brand new for $1 or $2. You learned early that things had value beyond their price tag, that craftsmanship mattered, and that there was dignity in keeping something going instead of throwing it away. The cobbler knew that better than anyone. He stood at his bench all day, surrounded by other people's shoes, and he made each pair a little better than it was when it came in. He knew his customers by name. He knew which shoes belonged to which family. He remembered what he had fixed before and what would probably need fixing next. He was part of the neighborhood the way the barber was, the way the pharmacist was, the way none of those people are anymore. Not because they were not needed, but because the world that needed them that way stopped existing. If you remember the bell above the door, or the smell of leather and glue, or handing your shoes to a man in a stained apron who marked them with chalk and told you Tuesday, I would like to hear about it. Was there a cobbler in your town? Did your family have a pair of shoes they kept alive for years? Did you ever stand there as a kid watching him work, wondering how he knew exactly where to cut? Leave a comment and tell us what you remember. And if you found this worth your time, subscribing helps more people find these stories. The shoe repair shop is almost gone, but the man who stood behind that counter, who could take something broken and make it whole again, understood something we have mostly forgotten. The best things in life are the ones you do not throw away.